Hi, good evening or good afternoon. I'm Rosemary Crawford, and welcome to the Politicians Live, produced by Flo Taylor. Today we do have a call-in number of 412-231-2288. The purpose of this show is to get to know our judges, councilmen, legislators, and community leaders and ask if they know or even care who we are. Today's guest, Congressman Mike Doyle. It's just such a pleasure to have you here, and co-hosting is Terry Bradford.
Nice to be here.
And I guess we can just get right into it. What a year. What a year we're having. We do educate the community on this show. So for our consumers who are not familiar with you, could you tell us a little bit about who you are and what does a United States Congressman do? And here again, this is a United States Congressman, not a Pennsylvania state, but a United States Congressman who works mostly in Washington, D.C., but represents our interests here in this region. Congressman Doyle.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here today. Basically, I'm Pittsburgh Region's federal representative in Washington, D.C. The 14th Congressional District takes in the entire city of Pittsburgh and 73 communities around the city of Pittsburgh. Pretty much the eastern suburbs, the Alley-Kiski Valley, the Mon Valley, parts of the Ohio River towns, and a little piece of the South Hills. Our district has over 700,000 constituents. So it's a large district. Every congressional district is approximately 700,000. In Pennsylvania, we have 18 members of Congress and 2 U.S. senators. I've lived in the 14th Congressional District my entire life. This is where I was raised. This is where my wife and I got married and settled, and this is where we've raised our 4 children, who are now grown and living in Pittsburgh and working in Pittsburgh. So it's a community that's near and dear to my heart. It's one that I want to see grow and prosper. It's one where I want to see everybody's kids and grandkids have opportunity so that they can stay in this part of the country, because I think Western Pennsylvania is a beautiful part of America and a good place to live. And we have a lot of challenges still in our communities, as we do all across the country. One of the things that keeps me getting up every morning and keeps me motivated is the fact that we have an opportunity to work together with the community to bring about change and to address some of the tough situations that we see in Pittsburgh. And it's a town that's evolved over the years. I'm 63 years old. I've seen it as a one-horse steel town where all of our dads worked in heavy industries and manufacturing, to a town that's sort of evolved. It's a very diverse economy now. It's eds and meds, it's technology, it's robotics, it's energy, and we still make steel. The steel mill my father worked in, Braddock, is still an operating steel mill, the Edgar Thompson steel mill. So Pittsburgh's come a long way, but it still has a lot of challenges. Not everybody has benefited from some of the change that we've seen in Pittsburgh. So that's the challenge we still have, to work to make sure that all boats rise as we work on these problems. And it's something that I not only care very deeply, it's something that through my seniority and position now, I'm Dean of the Pennsylvania delegation. I sit on an exclusive committee, the Energy and Commerce Committee, and I'm a senior member there. I've been able to use my position in Congress to bring hundreds of millions of dollars back to Pittsburgh.
You mentioned challenges in this area. One of the challenges that we repeatedly hear from people in the community is that with all the growth that's going on in the area, African Americans are not benefiting and they're actually being shipped out of the city. What can you do? Well, first of all, what have you done to confront that problem, and what do you think you can do in the future to confront that problem?
Yeah, we're trying to attack it on several fronts, and gentrification is a problem. You see it in a lot of areas where you have these old communities and then all of a sudden they become trendy. People start buying and houses for 10 times what people paid for them. And then residents of the community are pushed out because they don't have the incomes to live in some of these areas. One of the things we've been trying to do, and I'll give an example in the Hill District, the new Civic Arena, you know, the Civic Arena has been torn down, that 28-acre site. I have worked very closely with the community, with Councilman Lavelle and others, to make sure that we fight for 30% of that housing to make sure that it's eligible for low-income individuals so that people in the communities will have an opportunity to buy housing there. Secondly, we want to make sure that businesses, that there is a set aside so that people in the community that want to have a business have an opportunity to put some business ventures in that space too. I fought for a $350 million grant that was just awarded to Pittsburgh, for low-income housing in the Larmer area of East Liberty. All of my economic development grants that I've given to East Liberty, to Rankin, to Duquesne, to McKeesport, and now the Lower Hill, I've always targeted poorer communities where we need economic development and try to create jobs. The old Conley Vocational School, that was my project, the Energy Innovation Center. One of the things we want to do there is help train people for these jobs that are coming down in the energy industry that are going to pay $50,000 to $75,000 a year. And you don't need a college degree, but you do need some specialized training. And education is the key. Nobody's going to get a job anymore in this economy with a strong back and strong arms. You got to have something up here too. But there's training programs available. We want to make sure that people have access in the community to those kinds of programs. So that's some of the things I've been working on.
There's also concerns, particularly in the East Liberty area, or what used to be East Liberty, now it's called Shady Side, or extension of that, and that a lot of the jobs, even jobs that aren't high education jobs, like working in Panera Bread, are not held by too many African Americans. They've somewhat been displaced. What can you do, or what have you done, or what can you do in the future to confront this problem?
Well, I mean, there's certain limitations that government has in terms of obviously no business can discriminate against that. Their hiring policies, and those laws are on the books. So, we want to make sure that those are being complied with. The government can't force the private sector to say you must hire X amount of people at your business. So that would be unconstitutional. But we want to make sure that there's opportunity, that everyone should have an equal opportunity to those jobs. And I think the key to a lot of jobs that you can sustain a family with, it gets back to education. And I don't think we've put near enough resources into the community or in the federal budget for that matter for education. But we're fighting an element in Washington, D.C., this wing of the Republican Party, they call themselves the Freedom Caucus. It's really the Tea Party wing of the Republican Party that doesn't want to fund any of these programs. And it's been a constant battle with the administration and in the House of Representatives with this wing of the Republican Party that has just stymied every attempt that the president's made to implement more of these programs that would be of assistance to communities like East Liberty and Larmer and other places in Pittsburgh.
And just so that our viewers understand, Congressman Doyle, like I said, it's the United States Congress, and there's two houses of Congress. The House of Representatives, which is based on the amount of people in the district, and the United States Senate, and every state has 2 senators, and of course the president. And the reason I'm saying this is that bills have to come through the House of Representatives, then they have to be consented to by the Senate, and then approved by the president or vetoed. And with that said, all of these entities must work together in order to improve the situation. And I'm going to ask one more question, and Terry, I'm going to stop hogging all the questions, because I know you have a lot to say. What can you do to have these houses work together? It's my understanding that some people vowed when President Obama became president they would not cooperate with him, no matter what he did, and even to their detriment. What can you do? What are you doing? Or what will you be able to do in the future? And what have you done to solve this problem?
Well, I mean, Mitch McConnell, who leads the Senate, made it very clear that his goal in life was to make Barack Obama a one-term president.
He failed.
He failed miserably. The Republicans have never made it a secret that they don't want this president to succeed. They have perpetuated this birther thing that their candidate for president has spent 5 years on to just try to do everything possible to make it hard for Barack Obama to implement the things he wanted to do. Now, how do you change that? You need to get them out of Congress. We really don't need any more conservative Republicans going down to Washington, D.C. with the idea that their job is to limit the government's ability to work as a partner with communities like Pittsburgh and others. When the president tried to do a massive infrastructure bill, which would have created a lot of jobs, they blocked it, they minimized it. When the president tried to give health care to people that didn't have insurance, they derisively called it Obamacare, and the president embraced that term actually during the election. 62 times they have voted to repeal the Affordable Care Act.
Absolutely.
Never once have they put an alternative piece of legislation on the floor to say, here's a better idea from us. They just wanted to tear down what the president wanted to do.
Which he modeled after a Republican governor.
Yes, he did, from the Massachusetts bill. But you know, when you ask me what I can do,
Yes.
I have one vote in the United States Congress. There's 435 of us. This country's a divided country. And the way people get news today, when I first came to Congress, the internet was just starting. There was no social media. There were no super PACs. There weren't billionaires running around this country trying to influence election by spending hundreds of millions of dollars on television commercials. And these outside groups now seem to have more pressure on members of Congress than their leadership does. So in the Republican caucus, they didn't fear John Boehner, and they don't fear Paul Ryan. They fear the Heritage Foundation and the Koch brothers and these outside groups that have the ability to come in and spend the money because of Supreme Court decisions that has changed the way politics operates, the McCutcheon decisions and Citizens United. If we want to change this for the better, we need to throw those two laws out, and the opportunity to appoint a new Supreme Court judge that would, because that was a 5-4 decision.
It was.
Okay, so, you know, it could be overturned by a 5-4 decision. And it seems a good start would be to get this obscene amount of money out of politics that's enabling a very small group of people in this country, billionaires, to basically pick their presidential candidates and to pick their members of the House and the Senate. That's how it's going to change. I've not been bashful about saying that and fighting that. I have fought this sequester from day one. It is just killing the discretionary part of the budget, which kills our ability to be able to help people. Because a lot of people think that the only thing the federal government should do is defend the country and not much else.
And for our viewers, what is the sequester?
So the sequester was a negotiation that took place to try to get a budget agreement that said that if we couldn't agree on a budget by a certain deadline, originally it was December 31st of 3 years ago, that they would then sequester the discretionary part of the budget, which is a third of the budget. There's mandatory parts of the budget and statutory parts they can't touch. But the discretionary part, that's where we fund research and education and infrastructure and programs like this. That would have automatic across the board cuts in the defense and non-defense discretionary part of the budget for 8 years until such time we got these numbers down to where they wanted to get them in the budget agreement. The only way to undo the sequester is to get a budget agreement. There hasn't even been a negotiation to do it because the Republicans refused to negotiate with the president on this budget. Well, we have a say-so in this government too, even though we're in the minority. So what we have is this, nobody's making decisions on what's working and what's not working and what's good and what's not good in the discretionary part of the budget. It just gets ratcheted down. Research money gets cut. People don't see that right away. But what happens is bright people, instead of going into research, they go to Wall Street and write algorithms because they can make money doing that, but they see the federal government pulling away from basic research. So the next cure for maybe Alzheimer's or Parkinson's disease, it eludes us because our best and brightest people aren't doing that research anymore. Pittsburgh is the 6th largest recipient of federal research dollars because of UPMC and Carnegie Mellon and the University of Pittsburgh. That not only brings a lot of very bright people into our region, it brings a lot of employment and jobs into our region. And when you see these companies like Uber and Google and others locating in Pittsburgh, it's because there's talent here. That's why they're here. And they're bringing other people, and they make good money, and they buy homes, and they pay taxes, and they help make the community vibrant. So, you know, we just have to make sure as that kind of growth happens, that we don't push out people that still haven't been able to get where they need to be. This is why the project in Larimer, a $350 million project, is going to provide a lot of affordable housing for people right in that East Liberty Larimer corridor. I mean, it was targeted specifically because of some of what's been going on with some of the gentrification you're seeing in East Liberty due to the development there.
Right. So essentially, it's almost like we know that if a person has a problem and they don't solve it or confront it, it leads to mental illness. Parts of our government is almost like a mentally ill entity. Terry, you have any questions?
Yeah, I do. Mike, as far as the region here, this area, okay, unemployment for African Americans is 19%. The average across the country is 4.5. In Pittsburgh, for white America, it's 5. I mean, 19% is embarrassing. It's been that way for too long. It's been that way while you've been.
And the average in America is not 4.5 for African Americans.
No, I mean 4.5 cross on
okay.
that.
I don't want people to think that
for
it's 19% in Pittsburgh and 4% everywhere else.
It's 19% in Pittsburgh, and that's unacceptable. And I heard you say, we can't make these companies. They're not hiring us. Okay, they're not, and nobody is fact checking and making sure they're doing things like they claim they are. Education, you're absolutely correct, needs to be better. But even with that, we're still not getting the jobs. Okay, so what we're doing in Pittsburgh is we're bringing people in to take these jobs. One of the reasons is due to the lack of education. The other is we brought Google into East Liberty. We asked them for no training. We asked for nothing, and so here it is, a company that has 2% minority, period, in Google. Okay, they got in trouble for that. They hired up African American real quick. They only have 2% in any of their offices. So here they come in our neighborhood, didn't have to do any training, didn't give nothing back to our community. I don't know what they gave to East Liberty besides all the gentrification and all the things that are going on has nothing to do with the African Americans. It's, well, we did East Liberty, we need to do these other areas, let's add some houses. We didn't add houses 10 years ago, we didn't add houses 15 years ago to these areas, we didn't care about them. Now that young urban whites want the cities back, that's across the country, wow, suddenly we've got money for housing. Oh, we're gonna do Homewood next. When all these people have been living there all these years struggling, no help, nobody cared. Now that everybody wants to be inside the city because they want closer to transportation and going, everybody now has money to, let's make the areas beautiful. What do we say to those that have been living in these areas when nobody cared? Now suddenly we can no longer afford it. Even these affordable houses are going to be too expensive for most African Americans because of 19% unemployment. Those houses are not for us. And I don't hear nobody addressing it. I think these are questions that are asked of me from the neighborhoods. Pittsburgh has been run by Democrats for over 100 years, and we got 19% unemployment with Democrats taking care of us.
What do you think it would be if Republicans were doing it? I mean, you know what gets me about this? It really gets me that Republicans said, what have Democrats done for you lately or over the years? When these are the people that are obstructing us from doing many of the things that we've been trying to do over the years. They are chiefly the architects. Yesterday we heard Donald Trump say he doesn't even pay taxes. He's a billionaire.
Right.
They do two things down there. I've been there a long time. I know what they do down there. They cut taxes for rich people is what they do.
Absolutely.
And they dismantle the social safety net. That's what Republicans do. Right. And if you think that 19 years or years of Democratic administration has brought something bad to Pittsburgh. If this were Republicans running this place, it had been over a long time ago. It's Democrats that have stood up time after time for the social safety net in this country and in this region. And guess what? When we attract companies like Google, that's not a bad thing. You know what Google's done? They brought a ton of revenue into the city coffers so that the city can match, a lot of these programs that come down from the federal and state government are match programs. For years, we didn't have the money to leverage other money. These companies that, because of the revenues from their property taxes and their wage taxes, are putting those monies into Pittsburgh. Would we rather they not be here?
No,
I wanna-
no. It's not that we
So
rather.
what I'm
We
saying
don't rather
is
they not be
we
here,
don't
but
wanna-
we're not benefiting from any of those being
I
here.
take issue with that when you say we're not benefiting. I'm
At
saying that
19% unemployment. What do you-
$350
when
million
it was-
is of
when
investment
unemployment was
going into
23%.
affordable housing.
Let's just do one at a time.
Okay.
You can't blame 19% unemployment on Google. What I'm trying
I
to
never
say
said
is
Google was the
the
reason
problem
for
is we need to
unemployment.
make sure the economy has changed here. I mean, that's rather obvious. I've lived here my entire life. The economy has changed.
It has changed.
So my dad couldn't get a job today because the skill he had was a strong back and strong arms, okay? That's when you grew up in Swissville or Rankin or Braddock, those jobs don't exist anymore.
We understand
So
that.
what we have to do is we have to keep pace with the changing economy. And so one of the responsibilities I feel that I have and government has is to make sure that people have access to education. The Republicans have been against that from day one. The only education, therefore, is private education
absolutely.
and charter schools. And so, and that doesn't lift the boats of a lot of the people that I represent. So, is it perfect? It's not perfect. It's not acceptable.
It's
But the
unacceptable.
thing is you have representatives here in the city of Pittsburgh, I believe, because I work with a lot of them, that are committed to working on that problem and changing it. Now, maybe not as fast as everybody would like to see it happen, but the suggestion that somehow Republicans would do a better job.
First of all, I never implied. I
I-
never said the word of
Well,
Republicans would do a
we
better
hear
job.
a lot that what have the Democrats done for you?
Well,
I
we,
hear that
first of all,
from
we
people.
haven't said that, okay?
you
But,
know.
but the question is, when you live in a city that is I mean, you have to move, okay? I have sons that are educated. I know you keep saying education. They went to college.
Mm-hmm.
They did everything they were supposed to do. Could not get a job in Pittsburgh, okay? They now live in Maryland, working for NSA. See, the companies or the government said, oh, wait, you're well qualified. Not here in Pittsburgh. Couldn't get in. My one son does work at, my other son does work at Westinghouse in Cranberry. He's the only African American in network engineering out there. And he said they had 15 openings. Nobody else got in. I'm saying is even the ones that are educated, so let's not, we're getting educated. We have to leave here because we can't get these jobs. We're not getting in.
That's a true statement,
And
but
that's-
it's not true now.
It is true. It's
well-
happening. My sons
Well,
are
let's
young.
let
Well,
Congressman Doyle
let's
answer
talk about
the question.
statistics. I mean, you can have, there's lots of anecdotal stories that people can tell about someone they know that couldn't get a job. But I'm saying statistically, we are seeing young people now staying in Pittsburgh, and our young population is growing in the city now. It's not declining. It was declining year after year after year for a lot of years. But that has been stemmed now, and we're starting to go the other direction. It's like I'm saying, we still have a lot of work to do, and I'm not here to say it's
right.
everything's
Nobody's
fixed.
saying-
And
Oh,
we're
I
going
know.
to go to a
But I'm
caller
saying we're
after
starting
this.
to move this in the right direction.
19%.
Okay. And caller,
not moving.
we have a caller. Caller, you're on the air. What's your question?
Yes, this is Nora Parker. How are you?
Good.
I'm well. How are you doing, Ms. Parker?
Just fine. I want to wish our Congressman Mike Doyle a happy birthday.
Well,
We are so blessed to have him in our life, and I want to say, ever since our senator, Congressman, Bill Coyne retired, he said he could retire because Mike was such a great congressman, and he knew he would continue what he wanted. And I just wanted to let you know, Mike, how important you were in all of Pittsburgh's lives. I'm so thankful to see you down at our station. And I just know that the president, Senator Bob Casey, they always love when you come along with him. And you are truly the bodyguard of the President of the United States. So bless you for that.
well, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Did you have a question or just a comment? Okay. Now, I want to follow.
Yes,
Okay, what's your question?
I want to know, what can we do as the Black community to sit down with congressmen like yourself and have a meeting, town hall meeting, which you would be there and Senator Bob Casey would be there to speak with us, and even our governor, if he wishes to be there. Can you think we could arrange that before this year's out or the first of the year?
Okay, caller, we're going to let you go because you're distorted now, and I'm going to just follow up and just say, she's essentially saying, would there be an opportunity for a town hall meeting between a congressman, a senator, such as Senator Casey, and the governor, Governor Wolf?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for them and their schedules, but I'm sure that all of them feel the same way that I do, that it's good to engage the public and to talk to one another. And I try to stay in close touch with all of the state representatives and city council people in my district. And we meet frequently because we share common issues in the community.
And she means meeting with the public.
Yeah,
the way that the mayor has those forums going on now with a lot of people.
I think all of us are open to those kinds of ideas, especially if it's a good exchange of ideas and to hear. And it probably would have to be done regionally. I don't know that it'd be one location to do it all. You'd
different
probably want
areas.
to do maybe one in certain parts of the city and then some out in the suburbs, and because some of the problems in the Mon Valley might be different than some of the problems in the Hill District, and some of the problems in the South Hills and that. But to the extent that our schedules permit it, that the Senate and the House operate on different schedules, and Senator Casey obviously has a much bigger territory than I do.
Absolutely.
So,
the whole state.
but yeah, I mean
I think it would
that's
be
an
great.
idea that people could be receptive
I think
to.
it's good.
And I did want to follow up. Now I know Terry was talking about some of the diversity issues, and I want to kind of talk specifically about diversity because you talked about judges. Now, of course, we know in the United States Supreme Court, the Senate confirms the judges, and even in the district court, the president does the appointments. What role have you played, or can you play, in having some diversity in the judges? Because it's my understanding there's no African American judges on the federal court in our region.
What we do is we have a limited function in the House because we don't do the advise and consent. So these are nominated by the White House and then consented by the Senate. What we do is try to recommend good qualified people to the bench. And I have on numerous occasions recommended qualified African Americans to the president. Whether they get picked or not is not in my hands. But anytime someone comes to me and asks and presents their credentials, and most of these judges you come to know because you're in the area and you know their work. But I think it's a goal we should strive for, and I think locally here too, that I know Rich Fitzgerald and I and others have been pushing the party to make sure that we have better representation on our ticket when these judge openings take place, say in common police courts and others. It's an endorsement process. So all the candidates go to all the different party. You know about this, and then they vote. Well, sometimes the vote doesn't really reflect the makeup of the community, but it's the vote of the Democratic Committee. So we're trying to, be a little bit more proactive in not to tell the committee what to do, because then they react opposite. If they think the elected officials are telling them what to do, that has a backlash to it too. But to try to stress the importance that our Democratic ticket should reflect the community. And so when we have a number of these judge slots open in common police court, we want to see some balance in that.
Because we know in the last election, no women or African Americans,
There's only one,
and we
in there,
had
Dwayne
one.
Woodruff. Couldn't even get one.
Well, were supported by the Democratic Committee.
Right.
And that and because no women were and there was no diversity, we had a candidate who is the gay candidate. He was not supported, so there was no diversity in that ticket. And basically, it appeared that the community vetoed that ticket because there was a dead person that won in the election over the endorsed candidate. So there was a backlash. Also, just for our viewers to know, the process is people have to pay. I know the judicial candidates paid $7,000 just to be considered, and you have to pay to go to the committee meetings. Now that can be a hindrance for people who may not have the money from African Americans or other people. What is and those can add up to a lot of money. I heard one person in the Democratic committee say they expected the judicial candidates to spend up to $40,000 just to be considered. Now that to me is a lot of money.
It's a way to
How
keep
is
people
that? Is that fair? Is that going to encourage
Well, let me say this.
African Americans to be a part of the process?
If you want to seek political office, whether it's as a judge, as a state representative, and then in a general election you face an opponent. Unfortunately, raising money is part of that equation. I come from a blue-collar family in Swissvale. Nobody in my family was ever in politics. I'm the first. I had no money when I decided to run for Congress. Excuse me. my wife made it very clear to me that I was not allowed to use any of our savings, what little we had, in a political race. I had to spend lots of time on telephones begging people, and pretty soon my friends and relatives didn't take my calls anymore. It's a tough process. There's no question about it. Every candidate has to do it, and judicial races get expensive too. Some people are self-funders. You see some people get in these races and they're independently wealthy and they spend money. We've seen that happen too. Because of what happened in the last endorsement, we got together and we basically said this can't be like this anymore. Now, it was a vote of the committee people.
That the community vetoed.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is,
because people really
we're trying to say to
don't
the committee,
like this, you know, that everything's about money. I don't think the community likes it. I'm sorry, we have a call. Caller, we're on the air. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, my name is Justin.
Hi, Justin.
hello,
Hi, how are you today, Rosemary?
I'm good.
Hi, how are you?
I have a question for you.
Okay, what's your question?
Okay, my first time doing this. Anyway, you know the Trump Foundation has been using money to pay off lawsuits and purchase personal property. What do you think that the Attorney General in New York should do, being a former prosecutor?
Well, wow, that's an interesting question. Generally, I don't answer those questions as the host. We have the guest answer. So, Congressman Doyle,
Well,
I
I'm
know
not
you're
a former
lawyer.
prosecutor, so, and I'm not a lawyer, so I'm neither. But there has been allegations that the foundation money, people were donating to this charity, to this foundation, and then the foundation uses that money for purposes that look
losses.
personal, and to take care of personal or business. And if that's true, and I'm not a prosecutor or an attorney, but my understanding of the law, that would be a violation of the law, and I think it is being looked into. But I don't feel expert in the law. I was a businessman, not a attorney.
Okay,
thank you for the question,
Thank you.
Justin. I think speaking of Trump, let's talk a little bit about this presidential election. I'm sure we have a debate that got almost or more attention than the Super Bowl, and that's something that I think is extraordinary because most people are not as interested in politics. But with this particular election, where some people don't like either candidate, but there's so much at stake, there's a lot of people who are undecided. So, Congressman, what did you think about the debate?
I watched the debate. I thought Hillary came in well prepared.
Thank you, Justin.
I think.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Oh, thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
And I think Donald basically come in there and was going to wing it like he does all the time. I just don't believe that this man is stable. The thought of him having the nuclear code scares many Americans, myself included. The way he reacts to people taunting him or saying something about him when he made the statement that if these Iranian boats surround one of our ships and make gestures at us, that he's going to blow them out of the water. This is a guy that shouldn't be commander-in-chief. His personal behavior has always been about what's best for Donald Trump and his family. He has not paid contractors that have worked for him. He basically gives them 60 cents on the dollar and says, sue me if you don't like it. This is a man that throughout his business dealings, and we learned in the debate that he actually admitted that he didn't pay taxes, and he said because he's smart. Now, imagine what it must have felt like for the person watching that and that's making $30,000 or $40,000 a year, and some of their paychecks going to pay federal income tax, and they're watching a billionaire say that he didn't pay any taxes because he's smart. And then he also said he uses the laws to benefit his family and his businesses, meaning when he treats people unfairly. The man has disqualified himself, in my opinion. What's scary is half the country, this is a close race. This race shouldn't be close. So you look on the other end, Hillary has I think two things. At the beginning of the debate, he had her on her heels a little bit on the trade issue. A lot of Americans feel these trade deals are not level playing fields for us. We want trade. You've got to have trade.
Gotta have trade.
But you got to have trade that's balanced and fair. And unfortunately, not everyone's playing by the same rules we're playing by.
That's right.
When we see the Chinese manipulate their currency and dump their steel here, their excess capacity, and take jobs from Americans, that's why Americans are angry about these trade deals. And, you know, Hillary initially supported a lot of these trade pacts. So I think, you know, that's been a challenge to her. And I think, you know, the other thing is because of the emails and the Benghazi thing, which the Benghazi scandal, I believe, was over-trumped up by the Republicans. There were 3 independent panels that looked at that and cleared her. And we've also learned from a Republican Attorney General. Let's remember the Attorney General looking in, the FBI Director, I'm sorry, looking into her case, was a appointee of a Republican president, said that there was no criminal behavior.
Yeah.
She shouldn't have set her email server up that way. And she's acknowledged that, and she's paying a heavy price for it. But in terms of qualifications, she has been a senator, a secretary of state. She has been in the Oval Office for 8 years when her husband was president. She's well prepared to be president of the United States. She's stable. Foreign governments know her. She has dealt with just about every leader in every country in the world. And I just can't imagine when people go in the voting booth and they think about the two seriously, that they could think that Donald Trump could be good for the country. Yet, half of America almost, you know, this is still a close race, which says something about the country too.
I would really like to discuss the white elephant in the room, and Terry has brought it up in terms of our region, and it's coming up in terms of social media. With Donald Trump saying derogatory things about women, people from Mexico, people's weight, how they look, poor people.
Their religion.
The religion. You want to put walls up. I mean, I guess he forgot how we were so happy when Germany took down their walls, but now we want to put a wall up. But what I'm saying is, people who are homosexual, hate seems to be a common theme, and bigotry. I'm not saying that he is hateful and a bigot. I'm saying those are themes that people perceive. And what Terry was, I believe, what she was saying, in the Pittsburgh region, I can't speak for the whole country, there seems to be an element of racism that people perceive that's not being confronted or dealt with. And like I said, when it comes to a person, if you have a problem and you don't try to solve it, that's mental illness. So if we have an issue of racism in this region and it's not solved, that's basically a region with that's really an entity acting like they're mentally ill. So, and like Terry was saying, you can have educated African Americans who are still discriminated against and not retained or hired or groomed. And yet, the Democratic Party expects these same African Americans to support them. And they're not, and there's a perception. I'm not saying this is true. I'm saying there's a perception that these votes are being taken for granted and that there's no return. And there's a perception that decisions are made in rooms with non-African Americans, and then certain African Americans are just basically told, give this to your community. But there's no real support in these communities. Now, that's, and so that's Pittsburgh. So if we're talking about the country, if we have a country where certain people like the bigotry that's being perceived and the hateful things that are being perceived, is that really why these people are voting for this man who many believe is unqualified, who's never had public office, who's been bankrupt 4 times or 6 times, who says all these things that make no sense and contradicts himself, and admitted that whole birther movement he started, he admitted President Obama was born in the United States.
Yeah.
But is this racism something that needs to be confronted and solved, particularly in our region, who a Caucasian congressman said was known, Western District is known to be racist. Congressman Murtha said that.
Yeah, when he was talking about central Pennsylvania and that there were still elements of the Klan there. Look, you talk about perceptions.
Yes, absolutely. That's what we're talking about,
And
perception.
I think one of the toughest things and one of the things we need to do is black and white people sometimes having problems speaking truthfully to one another, how they really feel. There's perceptions in rural America that are quite opposite the perceptions we see in urban America. When you hear about the angry white man, okay, they
Who seems to support Donald Trump.
Yeah, they perceive that they're somehow being wronged. It's not true. It's not really happening, but in their minds, they want to blame somebody for the situation they're in. So they'll blame illegal immigrants, or they'll blame Muslims, or they'll blame black people. And they're saying, you know, they get everything, nobody gives me any. And it's a perception that has no basis in reality or truth, but it's a strong perception that's out there. I think it's tough sometimes. Let me just say this as a white person. My family came from Ireland and Italy in the early 1900s. So our families came here post-slavery. We're not part of the South. Nobody owned anybody, and we started in the mills in some of the worst jobs there were because that's all they would let the Irish do. Mr. Carnegie treated them quite brutally. But I'm not comparing it to the black experience. What I'm saying is that a lot of people come here and they say, I don't hate anyone. I don't hate someone because of their color. I've never discriminated against anyone personally, and I don't feel guilty, you know, that I've done something wrong. So a lot of people will say, you know, I've not done anything, and why do people think, you know, that the racism is prevalent amongst everyone? And the reality is there's racism in the country. There's no question about it, okay? And we need to confront it and talk about it.
Yeah, we need to have that conversation.
And talk about it honestly and not feel like we can't say things to one another.
Agreed. That's why we have this show.
That's the
I
only
would
way
agree.
we can solve those problems. And where there's perceptions that aren't accurate, we need to work to make sure people understand what reality is, but we also have to improve the situation. You look at Pittsburgh, it's not a perfect town by any stretch of the imagination. I think the new chief of police is trying very hard to engage the community. His own police officers took a no confidence vote in him because he has tried to engage the community.
He has.
So I'm saying efforts, I think Mayor Peduto honestly wants to try to bring people together too. It's not easy. There's elements all throughout the community, and in Pittsburgh, you know, no matter what community you go to, there's not one group to talk to. There's several. And sometimes the groups don't agree with one another. So if you're trying to seek consensus on a project and what's best for the community, and this group says this, and this group says this, and this group says this, and they all claim to speak for everyone, but they speak for the group that they speak for. You have to build consensus, and you have to do that with dialogue, and you got to do that with just being honest with one another.
Yeah.
And there's things we can do, and there's things that we can't do. But the thing is, we have to never stop being satisfied or stop trying because things aren't where we want them to be.
Yeah.
And I just think, and maybe it's just because I'm lived here all my life and I love this area, I like to believe the best in people. I like to think that the people I work with all are well-intentioned people. Not everybody, but I think, you know, the vast majority of the people that are working in the community, and I'm not just talking about the elected officials, I'm talking about the heads of community organizations, our foundations, you know, a lot of the philanthropic thing, that people really want to see Pittsburgh and the community do well. And it's hard, and it's not easy to get everybody, all the cats herded in one group, you know, and get everybody singing on the same songbook. but we're trying. We're really trying to do these things because we really care about this town. And we want everybody to have a good quality of life here.
I would think that, I believe that everyone cares, but we don't need caring. We need results. We need economic development. We need those things to come. 19%, the Depression went at 23%. The Great Depression started when unemployment was 23. African Americans were at 19%. When we see Pittsburgh is the best place to live, they're not talking about African Americans. When they talk about it's great jobs here, housing's cheap, we're not part of that. So that number that we see is a misconception. Oh, Pittsburgh is the best place for who? For who? Not at 19% unemployment for us. And I don't see that as an emergency. If that was white America, that would be an emergency. Oh my God, 19% unemployment, they would be going crazy. But because it's African Americans, it's almost like with the people with the heroin. When African Americans been dying over that, it was no concern. They were going to jail over it. They were locked up and everything. Now that it's white America, oh, Congress can write all kind of bills. Oh, it's now considered a health issue. We're tired, okay? I've always lived in Pittsburgh. This is my home, okay? But it makes me feel horrible. I just moved back from Maryland, and I feel like I've gone back 20 years. 20 years. We have not moved enough. We're so diverse. We're so divided in this city. Some live here, some live here. We are not. They just said that to find any diversity in Pittsburgh, you can't go to any of the suburbs. They're not diverse. You have to go to Bloomfield, Shadyside. Those are the only inner city areas that are. But when I look at people who say, I'm looking for jobs, the doors keep, you know, it's just not, it's been named the third worst place for African Americans to live. So it is a great city, but it's not great for us, and nobody is addressing it. It's not an emergency. We haven't heard a word from anybody to even say, oh my God, we do realize it's 19% and we're working on it. I keep asking. I've asked, okay, is anybody going to say anything about this, or is it just, that's not our issue, that's your issue? So I think, unfortunately, what we see is the same thing. We see us struggling. We hear about all the housing we're not going to be able to afford, even at low income. We're still not going to be able to afford some of these. And I think as a city that it is a great city, but I think African Americans are tired. They're disgruntled. They're unhappy. Okay, no one ever said the Republicans were going to do better. But when you have seen over the years, if you haven't had a job for 1 year, 2 years, okay, we're run by a Democratic city, all Democrats, wait a minute, maybe we need to look. Maybe we need to look at something else now, because for us, it can't get much worse. You're saying they could make it worse? I didn't say but the point is, it feels like, I didn't say it was. We're going to get their vote. They're going to go in, they're going to pull straight Democrat. I don't have to go into their communities. We rarely see, Bill Clinton was the only one that came to Homewood recently. We haven't seen nobody campaigning in our areas. We haven't seen nobody ask us what we want. That's our fault. Nobody has asked us, what do you all need? What do you want? I haven't seen nobody ask us anything. That's our fault, because we hold nobody accountable at all. We don't say, okay, you promised us this, let's see if you're accountable. We are not doing that, and that's our fault. And so now we're saying, no more. You're not just getting our vote just because we're Democrats. We used to be Republicans. African Americans started the Republican Party. We're not just voting straight Democrat just because we know they'll do something for us, but are we really benefiting? I'm not saying we're going the other way, but we have to look also to say, no longer can we say, we're just going to give them our vote. Because what are we getting from it? We're still at the same 19% that we've been for years.
I hear what your perception is, and I hear what you're saying about unemployment. I do not agree even slightly with you.
I understand.
On the fact that we haven't been in the communities and we don't care and we haven't been trying. I have been in every single neighborhood in my congressional district all the time. And
you have double digits in your congressional district of African Americans not working. You have double digits out there.
And all the programs and all the successes that we've had have been the result of people. I was meeting, connected the Department of Labor up in Homewood with Rashid Birdsong to up the worker training programs that he's doing and to make sure the Department of Labor is working with him. I have brought over $400 million in the black community. I could have put that money anywhere. I specifically put it in the neighborhoods to stir economic development. All these abandoned industrial sites that finally got businesses on it and employing people in McKeesport, in Duquesne, in East Liberty, in Rankin, where the Cary Furnace, we're going to develop that site. These communities were on their backsides because the industry left.
Right.
Okay? And a lot of people had jobs in an industry where they need no more training than
Absolutely.
And so
Absolutely.
that is evolved. It's no different than the white coal miners in West Virginia feeling the same way you feel because they think the Democratic Party has abandoned them and we have a war on coal.
Let me tell you the difference.
Well, let me
Let me tell you the
at least
difference
finish
real quick.
because
You have white privilege, okay? Just from the color of your skin, you're going to get a job far quicker than that African American is. So even though he lost that,
I do want to make
my point
his
is,
point
though,
here.
we're in there every day trying to make it better, okay? Every day. There hasn't been a single Republican initiative, not one, coming out of the United States Congress to help the inner cities or the poor, okay? Not one. Their whole focus is on helping the top 1% of this country. I see it every day down there.
I'm not
I come
disputing that you
home
don't see
every
that.
week from Washington. I'm there 4 days a week, and every day I'm in Pittsburgh. Okay, I'm somewhere in my district working with local officials and community groups in my district to try to help people in my district. Okay, I don't take anyone's vote for granted. I don't say I don't have to come into the black community. They vote straight Democrat.
Listen,
I'm in the black community all the time.
Perception is their
So,
reality. Listen,
but perception, there's got to be some truth to it too.
Listen, but it does. But perception is anyone's reality.
Yeah.
Okay, it's everyone's. It's what I feel. You can't tell me what I feel. That's what you're saying is happening, but that's not what I may be feeling.
I agree with that,
Okay,
but what I'm saying is,
so you can't
when
tell
you
me
say
what
you
I
want to
feel.
hold people accountable, hold them accountable for the things they should be held accountable for. Not because you feel a certain way, but because they actually haven't been to your
19%
community.
is telling me I'm right. Okay.
Well,
19% unemployment says I'm not telling a lie.
Well,
Okay, so
you can't
19
disprove a negative. What I'm saying is I'm not going to say, well, had we not done everything we've done, it would have been 30%. I'm not saying. What I'm trying to say is you
Or it
have
could be
elected
5%,
officials
or it could
in the
be
community
5.5.
that are working very hard. And in all of the communities you talk about, too, our state representatives, our city council people, we've all worked together, black and white, in these communities. All we can do is work as hard as we can and keep working to get people the tools they need to be successful.
It's not just the tools. If you got them the tools, if the employer is not hiring them, that tool is not going to help them.
Well,
do you understand
again,
that part?
if
they can't get the job, even though they're qualified, we're going to keep the same result.
There are so many openings coming down in the energy field, and we're trying to make sure that a disproportionate amount of that training is going to the African American community so that they are going to be, they need jobs filled. There aren't enough people to do this, okay? And there's going to be hiring done if we get people skills. And we'll track any company that we think is not hiring people because of their color. That's a federal violation of the law.
It is.
I mean, so there's no question about that. And I'm not, listen, I know how you feel, and I'm not saying that you don't feel that way. I'm just saying that a lot of people are working hard every day to try to change that.
And I believe that.
And I'm sorry it's not happening fast enough.
I believe that they are doing that.
We're trying.
I believe that.
We're trying.
But please don't minimize how
we
feel.
I'm not minimizing it
to
at
tell
all.
me that not having a job over and over again, we should just
I'm
be
just saying that
satisfied
I
with it.
believe that public officials should be held accountable for what they actually do or don't do. Okay,
Right.
I think that's fair.
Right, that's all I said is
I think it's not fair if they're being held accountable over a perception that isn't maybe based in what's really happening
It
with
is
them.
what's
So-
really happening. There's 19%
No, I'm
unemployment.
talking in terms of what that official can do.
I don't think it's for what. No, I would agree with that.
We have a
Okay,
few
that's
minutes
all we're
left in
saying.
the show. I do want to bring up.
So then we agree on that.
Yeah. Nice, healthy debate. Nothing wrong with it. But I do want to go to another question.
Yeah.
The police shootings of so many people, many African Americans, many not, and the use of special prosecutors. How do you feel about special prosecutors as opposed to the district attorneys who the police work with every day. They're friends.
I think all those cases, first of all, I think there's a woeful lack of training. When someone's walking away from you, there is no valid reason to use deadly force on that person. And we've seen instances where a person was actually walking away from the police officer and shot. I think those cases automatically should go to a special prosecutor. They cannot be adequately prosecuted, and the credibility won't be there either. I've been working on gun violence. John Lewis is coming here with me on October the 9th. John and myself and others led we were frustrated because every time there's one of these mass shootings, and we've seen them all over the country, and we saw one in my district in Wilkinsburg. We have a moment of silence and Congress does nothing.
Yep.
And we're just so sick of it, and we thought, what can we do to draw attention to it? And we went to John because he's so respected in the Congress, and asked him if he would lead a sit-in to try to stem some of the gun violence that's taking place in this country. We have more military weapons in this country than any country in the world. 300 million weapons for a population of 300 million. And they're military weapons designed to kill lots of people quickly. They have no purpose in a civil society.
Absolutely.
And I have fought that, and I have demonstrated against that, and I'm for more training. You know, a lot of these police officers, they're not being trained, and we're seeing these, and special prosecutors are a must, I think, in cases like
We
this.
have 1 minute left, and I wanted to know if in 30 seconds, do you have anything you want to add that you want our viewers to know in 30 seconds
Yeah,
or
I
less?
just want people to know, I think it's a tremendous privilege to serve my community in the United States Congress. As a blue-collar kid from Swissvale, I never thought about being a congressman, and neither did anybody in my town. But the People's House, we come from all walks of life, but I love Pittsburgh, and I want to see everybody prosper in this town. I want to see our kids and grandkids get jobs, and I want that to be across the board for everybody, black and white.
Okay, thank you, Congressman, and thank you, Terry. Please remember, please register to vote, and if you do not like the job of our leaders, vote them out. Knowing our leaders and holding them accountable is the only way that we will have access to justice. Thank you for inviting us to your homes. I'm Rosemary Crawford, we have Terry Bradford, and we are so pleased to have Congressman Mike Doyle. This was a very informative interview. You answered the questions. We appreciate it, and thank everyone for watching our show and getting some information so that we can be better citizens, because this is our country and our region.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thanks
we
for
really
coming.
appreciate it.
Hello, little kids. Yeah. I just want you to live, I just want you to breathe, I just want you to fight for everything that you believe. I want you to dream, I want you to try, I want you to do everything you want before you die. I want you to live, my message to the kids, want you to find bigger and better ways to get bread. I don't want you upstate doing time in the feds. You got sprayed up, shot down, left dead. We make it hard for our children to see the foolishness when we leave them alone to be raised by TV and music. Streets watch everything, yup, kids too. It take a village to raise a child and it's still true. Adults and we are the ones that babies look up to. That's why you gotta watch the kind of people that's around you, cause they picking up everything and anything around you. Sorry, I am the bearer of bad news, but some of you sent your kids to swim with concrete shoes. Among snakes, fakes, and known scavengers, little girls growing up fast, searching for dad. Old lanes play with their head, get them in bed. Do them dirty, leave them with kids, that's how it is. Little boys with no mentors, engaging street wars. Left on concrete floors or behind bars. We gotta teach y'all that it's in them to